With the exception of complaining about the election and inciting a violent insurrection, Donald Trump hasn't really done much of anything since losing the election. He has golfed, but I mean, he's given up even trying to govern, and that's an issue, right? I'm a little bit torn on this. On one hand, like, I want him to go away because anytime he speaks and makes a public appearance, he just fans the flames further. But at the same time, during a global pandemic, we do need competent leadership at the federal level, especially when we're rolling out a vaccine, when we need federal leadership to deliver, money to states, aid to states. So, it's a mixed bag, but it still is really stunning that Trump has just basically gone M.I.A. In fact, it's been 6 days since he's made a public appearance at the time I record this video, and CNN did a segment on this that kind of puts it all into perspective about his overall schedule since the election.
President Trump hasn't been seen publicly in 6 days, and his schedule has been mostly empty since Election Day. If you take a look, from Tuesday, November 3rd until today, more than half of the time, 46 days, no public events at all have been listed on the president's schedule. But Trump has spent 16 days golfing on one of his own courses. CNN contributor Garrett Graff is joining us now. He's the author of several books, including The Threat Matrix, Inside Mueller's FBI, among them. So, Garrett, if, little to nothing is on his schedule, what the heck has he been doing since the election?
Well, what we know so far is that he has spent a lot of time grousing, talking to aides, friends, his dwindling pool of allies, complaining about this election, complaining and trying to pressure election officials to try to overcome it. And now we understand, in the 10 days or so since the insurrection at the Capitol, when he has even gotten more toxic, as Caitlin Collins was just saying, he has turned his focus to trying to squeeze out a few final actions as president. We are expecting in the next 48 hours at some point to see as many as 100 pardons come down from the president. And this is something that typically all presidents do in their final hours, but no one has ever abused the pardon power as much as President Trump has. So everyone's waiting with bated breath to see who ends up on that list.
First of all, let me just say, a side note, Garrett's book looks like porn for resistance liberals, and I am so glad we're past the days where liberals are like worshiping Robert Mueller. They were like trying to like sexualize Robert Mueller, and it was just really creepy and weird, so I hope that we can move past that, because those days were some really dark times in American history. I couldn't resist. I had to like make a note about his book. But putting that aside, we actually do know who Trump is planning to pardon. And the first individual who will benefit from a Trump pardon is rapper Lil Wayne. This is according to XXL magazine. Trump's administration is currently preparing paperwork to pardon Lil Wayne. Now, if you're wondering why out of all of the rappers he's choosing Lil Wayne and not like Bobby Shmurda or BG, well, it's easy. It's because he's basically repaying a favor. Lil Wayne basically endorsed him, indirectly. It was a tacit endorsement, but nonetheless, it was a nod to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump remembers that. Lil Wayne tweeted this out during the 2020 election. Just had a great meeting with Donald Trump. Besides what he's done so far with criminal reform, the Platinum Plan is going to give the community real ownership. He listened to what we had to say today and assured he will and can get it done. So, Trump remembers that. And Trump is most likely, I'm assuming, going to pardon his allies and people who did favors for him. Like, he's going to use whatever time to just like make sure that he sets himself up and his allies up for the future. But like these 100 pardons and, commuting sentences, if we're talking about like nonviolent drug offenders, I would have no problem with that. But if we're just talking about like this cronyism where Trump is repaying debts and favors to people, I think that's pretty messed up. But when it comes to the end of the Trump era, I really hope that folks see that this was never about America or the American people. This was always about Donald Trump. Like this is kind of a mask-off moment to have a president like disappear, go M.I.A. because he lost an election and he's butthurt about that. Like, this should prove to folks that he never cared about you. This was always about him. This was a personal project. Like, you often hear chuds talk about how, well, he was well off, he was rich, he didn't have to become president, but he did because he cared about America. That's bullshit. I don't think Trump ever expected to become president. He was running for president as a vanity project. There were numerous reports that was the case, and that would be like the launching pad for some type of news network or TV network or something along those lines, but he never cared, and this shows it. Like, now that he's not going to be in power, and he won't get credit for the things that he does, like if he puts in place an actual cohesive plan to competently roll out the distribution of the vaccine, he probably thinks, oh, well, I'm not going to get credit. Joe Biden will get credit, so why would I care? Like, he never cared. But I mean, his supporters are in a cult, so they're not going to see him golfing for 16 days during a global pandemic since losing the election as a sign that he doesn't care about anyone but himself. They're not going to look at him pardoning his allies as a sign that he doesn't care about anyone but himself and those in his inner circle. This is a very deeply narcissistic and selfish individual, and his supporters just are never going to see that. And you'd think that if they were going to see it, it'd be now, when he's gone M.I.A., when, if you truly cared, you could be using these last days to make a difference. You'd see some kind of sad posts of his supporters. Like, he'd complain about losing the election and that it was stolen from him, and then his supporter would respond with basically, okay, yeah, the election was stolen, but we really need a stimulus. Can you do that for us with the remaining time that you have? Like, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you'd see the screenshots of this. And, this really is a cult. They'll never abandon him. They won't take that as a sign that maybe he doesn't actually care. Maybe he's just a self-serving narcissist. But, it doesn't matter because it's all coming to an end soon. And whether or not the Trump era itself is over, that is yet to be determined. I think that Trump's influence within the Republican Party is waning, largely due to the Capitol insurrection. But, we'll have to wait and see. I think that the Republican Party will adapt and kind of embrace some of Trump's tactics while not like being overtly Trumpian. But, it's almost over, and he's just sulking. He's not doing jack shit. And I think that this wouldn't be a story if the circumstances in the country weren't so bleak. But the fact that he's not doing anything, it speaks volumes. Like, his silence is deafening. But again, I'll be honest, part of me wants him to kind of like hide his face, because anything that he says, what is that going to do realistically for the country? He's not going to help heal wounds. He's not going to bring people together. He's not going to act in a competent way that puts us in a better position. It's just, so maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. But either way, I think it is still very telling that he's not doing anything.
Subscribe if you like this video, folks. Mike's tremendous, and he's doing a really, really good job. Many people are telling me about how wonderful the Humanist Report is. Bigly.